They still tend to lead out of authority or memory or past experiences. Maybe the easiest being, operating through the known relationship. While today's business needs something very different. It needs clarity, speed, learning, courage, ability to upgrade yourself very fast. So otherwise, yesterday's success becomes today's blind spot. That's where I think some of the leaders are facing maximum challenges.
We have Dinkar Rao, business coach, with us. Welcome, Dinkar. What are the biggest leadership challenges that you see today in your work?
When I closely work with leaders today, I think that I have enormous awareness, talent. The problem is emerging when there is a gap between knowing and doing. And when knowing and doing are separated, there are fractures in the way the organization works. So while the leaders might agree that the challenges are related to the expected speed, velocity, or also they might feel that down the line the ownership levels are not up to the mark, capability, discipline, alignment, energy. I fully agree with that. And leaders have also enough experience backing their capabilities. But you will agree with me, Smita, that the environment has changed faster than their leadership habits. Many leaders still lead through authority. Though they want to come out of that zone, they still tend to lead out of authority or memory or past experiences. Maybe the easiest being, operating through the known relationship. While today's business needs something very different. It needs clarity, speed, learning, courage, ability to upgrade yourself very fast. So the crux is that while the experience is important, experience becomes powerful only when it keeps upgrading itself. Otherwise, yesterday's success becomes today's blind spot. That's where I think some of the leaders are facing maximum challenges. They tend to operate from yesterday's success, which is actually today's blind spot.
Why has decision making slowed down in organizations? Even though, there's this fast-paced world with so many changes happening in the external world, decision making has slowed down within organizations.
While the technology has enabled the thinking process, the human speed required to act is coming down. Maybe it could be due to distractions, or it could be possibly too many priorities to work upon. Maybe the most simplest thing, too many meetings. So I see many leaders have a very packed calendar from morning to evening, attending meetings, and I really wonder how much time they have to really understand what are the actions emerging from these meetings and how are they being reviewed. So fundamentally, while all these Google Meets, D-Meets, etc., Zoom Meets have made our life busier, are we engaging into too many meetings without really connecting? That's the whole question before the leaders. Are we meeting without connecting? And if we are meeting without connecting, if we are not listening to what's happening around, I think our decision making is coming down. Speed of the whole aspect of taking faster decisions can come down. On the top of it, distractions.
So are there unclear expectations or too much communication, or what is it?
There are expectations which keep changing. It's partly because of the external situations, and also partly because of not enough homework being done to understand what do we really expect. And at times we start evolving a thought process and then validating it too late with the right stakeholders in the system. For example, let's say if there is a leader in the organization who wants to come out with a CRM which is far more effective than what's being used now. And you have all kinds of discussions with the possible partners who can bring the CRM, and then down the line you realize that our folks are not yet ready to even use the basic CRM. The whole thing gets postponed indefinitely. So the key question is, are we making connections with the stakeholders responsible for a decision well in advance so that there is lesser resistance down the line? So higher the homework, level of homework, more homework we do with our own people to know multiple aspects of a problem, lesser is the time to get the buying in when it comes to execution.
I think somewhere merit is getting overshadowed or replaced by a tendency to have closer people around you or relationships.
Yeah. So I think that's a That's a very common question in corporates that, hey, I'm not getting the kind of elevation I deserve. And this happens when uh, organizations are also sometimes underestimating the existing talent. That can happen at times. Or the people who are in those positions are also not evolving fast enough. So there is always a tendency that why someone else is getting quicker promotion. So it's partly true and partly psychological. It's true when somebody has all the evidence backing him or her, showing that the person is doing well, but sheer bureaucracy, and I repeat, sheer bureaucracy of things slow down the progress of high potential talent at times. So what happens eventually is that the high potential talent starts finding another mountain to climb when they see that they are not scaling up in the same organization. So when proximity, loyalty, or comfort begins to matter more than performance, high performers slightly get disengaged and maybe over a period of time get disengaged even more. They stop giving their best because they feel the system is, which means they start calibrating themselves to lower levels of energy just to be there in the system, at the same time not to take too many initiatives which can be disruptive. So what happens is that high potential performers at times start taking those calculated risks, alter their states of energy to give whatever system can digest. I hope I'm able to communicate, Smita.
Yeah.
There is a managed indifference, which I call it, where sometimes, very practically, I'll tell you, we see when we do these organizational transformation programs, sometimes we see people joining the organization with very high energy.
Hmm.
They do bring a lot of changes. 6 months, 8 months, 1 year down the line, we see them doing a lot of things. But after 1 year, we see that the energy levels are altered on the lower side. And the question when we ask them in during our one-on-ones is that why is it happening? They say that chief, the appetite of the organization to accept changes is not very high. So that also happens. But to be fair to the, let's say, the board which is trying to bring changes fast enough, it's exactly the same. They find that the leaders down the line are also not having the appetite to absorb disruptive changes. So being in the change management profession, I have access to both the worlds, which are part of the same organization. Where sometimes when we do a top-down approach, we find that the board is restless, and they find that the changes are not happening at the speed which is required. And at the same time, when we are talking about people who are very high performers, they also feel that the change is not happening at the speed which is required. And what gets blamed is this merit versus proximity trap, which means people start possibly having opinion that there are too many people who are there in the system for a long time, and because of them, high performers are slightly disengaged. You know, and the truth of this statement can be validated depending on the situation.
Is there somehow that is it that the leadership's capability and the gap with the potential or the gap with the ideal is somehow getting hidden somewhere? Somehow people are not able to assess that there is a gap in the leadership's capabilities versus actuals.
I don't want to restrict this problem only to leadership, and I also want to clarify when you say leadership, it's not a designation; it's a behavior. But generally, in the context of organizations, we perceive leadership to be somebody who is leading a team. That's perfectly all right. But then leadership behavior can be also demonstrated by somebody who has just joined the organization. So the question, if it is there an illusion or a gap in the way we assess capability? The answer is definitely yes. There are gaps, in the way people assess capabilities. It's also primarily coming from the illusions we have during the interviews. So sometimes we find people extremely capable from the conversations we have and the pedigree they bring in. But when you put them in a culture which requires not linear intelligence, but ability to understand the complex environment, uh, we find gaps. So I think the reasons sometimes organization suffer through enormous leakage of resources is because of their ability to assess the talent, not from capability perspective, but also from the suitability perspective. I would like to quote Dr. Belbin, and I was fortunate because of my previous engagements in certain organizations where I got exposed to these tools, where they came out with this eligibility and suitability trap. And interestingly, as per the work done by Dr. Belbin, it's very clear that there could be situations where you have surprise fits, where they might be people who don't sound very eligible, from the CV point of view or capability point of view, but they are very, very suitable to bring around change. So if I have to give you an example, I've seen in many transformation projects, some of the service heads become extremely good sales leaders because they carry that ability to listen, digest complaints, be patient, understand problems. And similarly, I've seen some of the sales leaders become extremely good service leaders because they want to solve the problems and they understand, hey, you know what? I understand what is that customers go through and what is that people who are in sales go through. So let me take up this position of service leadership. So what is needed is flexibility to understand how to put people in the right roles. And if we don't do that, we are in delusion. From time to time, I think we have to revamp a way of looking at people, the lens with which we see our people.
Which are these areas in which they don't estimate their own capabilities properly, or they're overestimating it, or what is it like?
So, while everybody thinks that they're excellent doers, I think what we overlook when we are trying to build a transformation is that and why I'm repeatedly talking about transformation is that today's context in which organizations are working is not just about transactional business where you're serving the buyers. Today we are looking at quantum jump, exponential growth, and all that requires transformation. And transformation requires fundamentally ownership. So what leaders or people who are in the positions where they have to hire people, form teams, overlook is, do we have people who are behaving like owners of their own function, not just implementers or reluctant implementers? Reluctance comes because the person's mental alignment is not to the quantum growth at times, or the person feels that there are too many situations externally causing him to slow down. But when you operate from ownership mindset, you are not allowing yourself to be slowed down by any external situations. You take ownership of everything, and that is not possible for everyone. And the second most difficult thing which I've found in any business is ability to consistently follow a discipline to do what matters. And discipline is not bureaucracy. Sometimes we confuse discipline just by saying, hey, you know what, I'm very disciplined. I send my reports on time. I log in on time. I come to office on time and leave the office on time. Everything about my life is discipline. No, that's perfect. But here discipline means, do you have deep respect for the system which is there right now? And do you also have deep respect that the same system which has helped you today will not be or may not be applicable tomorrow? So do you have the discipline to be innovative? So there are a lot of times where the leaders underestimate the power of discipline. And discipline is not about a bureaucratic compliance to the set norms. That is one aspect of discipline. The other aspect of discipline is your ability to respect the rhythm and system, both. And from that, draw insights to evolve the organization. For example, aim for these hurdles or daily stand-ups is to understand what is going around, be alert, take actions on time, preempt the bad news. When we understand the spirit behind the process, everyone starts loving the discipline. When we don't understand the spirit behind the process, it just becomes a mechanical component. But once people start understanding the deeper reason behind discipline, I think the whole vibration goes up. Freedom without discipline often becomes confusion. And many times people call, oh, my boss is a micromanager, but actually that's not true. The person is trying to build discipline by improving detail orientation, and that will give you more freedom.
So we'll connect for the next episode very, very soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.